Improv is everywhere. It's on the streets, it's at work, it's probably on stage. Jazz is a fantastic medium for improvisation because, well, without it, sometimes it just wouldn't be jazz. So with that said, we're going to check out a list of 25 tips that saxophonist Steve Lacy wrote down when he sat in with jazz great Thelonious Monk during the 1960s. If you don't know anything about Thelonious Monk or Steve Lacy, don't worry about it. My man Adam Neely went ahead and made a fantastic video from a musician's point of view about these same 25 tips. You can check out his video down below. Thanks for the inspiration. With that said, let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of Improv Sucks. I'm your host, Nelson Velasquez. And in this episode, we are going to be exploring some tips handed down from the great Thelonious Monk, the jazz pianist himself, to an up-and-coming saxophone player named Steve Lacy, and seeing how those can be applied to improv. Now, I'm not going to go through all 25 tips because I don't think all of them are applicable, but for the ones that are, I think these are going to marry up very nicely to our philosophies in improv theater. Don't forget, if you like this video, please like, share, rate, and most importantly, subscribe so we can keep the music going on the stage. Tip number 1. Just because you're not a drummer doesn't mean that you don't have to keep time. When you're playing part of an ensemble, just like you would in a jazz band, it's important that everybody's keeping time, not relying on just the drummer to keep the flow and to keep the feel going. And the analogy for that for an improv group is that it's not just one person that keeps the scene going or keeps the show going. Everybody has to contribute their part to make sure that we all arrive together at the same time when we start the show to the time we finish it. So keep timing your scenes. Tip number 2. Stop playing all that bull, the weird notes. Play the melody. In music, when you're playing with an ensemble, there's a lot of things that you can do to be really flashy, like you play a certain guitar lick.
Excellent!
Turn on an effect. Throw your guitar behind you and try to catch it.
All hail to the motherfucking
Or you can just punch out the drummer or light the singer on fire. I went too far? And the same is true in improv. In improv, you can do a lot of flashy things. You can do a lot of bits, a lot of like little bitty jokes when you're doing scene work. You can do a lot of object work where that's really ridiculous and has nothing to do with the scene. You can do like a weird accent or wear a wig or get a prop. You can do all those things. But it doesn't necessarily help the scene every time you do them. And if that's all you've got going into a scene or into a game, well, it's all flash, it's all bull. Stop playing the bull. Strive to have better scenes. Strive to have better theater in front of you. And then all the bull that you want to put on top of it is like ornament. It's a special flavor. You want to bake the cake first with the real scene, and then you put the icing on top. Tip number 3. Make the drummer sound good. Ba-dum, boom. Oh, that was good, right? I really like this idea of like, hey, listen, we need to turn down the amplifiers and play a little bit softer so we can hear the drummer. And the drummer sounds good. And that's analogous to what we do in improv. In improv, we think about the ensemble first and ourselves secondary. If I'm playing with you in a scene and I'm doing my job of making you look brilliant, and you're doing your job of making me look brilliant, guess what? Everyone in the scene looks brilliant. And I really like this tip. I think it's totally applicable to both music and to improv. Tip number 4. You gotta dig it to dig it, you dig? For me, when I hear that, it's kind of like you gotta be about this life. You gotta be about this life. You gotta dig being a part of the process of making music.
Can you dig it? Can y'all dig it?
You've got to be there in the room with all those other musicians. And you've got to dig that in order for you to be a part of it, understand? I really hate it whenever I'm part of an ensemble or I'm putting a group together when it's obvious there are people who do not want to be there. They audition to be there, but then they show up to rehearsals late, or they don't really want to be like featured in the show, or they don't promote the show. They do all these things to show like, I don't want to be here. And I ask myself, well, if you don't want to be here, why are you here? Why are you wasting everybody else's time? Man, you got to dig it to dig it, you dig? You've got to want to be there. On top of just showing up, your mind, body, and soul needs to be in the present when you're together performing improvisation. Because if one person isn't digging it, it's going to spread to the rest of the ensemble and you're not going to do your best work. Tip number 5, always know. The idea that you will always know what you're playing is universal to jazz or music as it is in improv. Be a know-it-all whenever you are up on stage with regards to the subject matter you're speaking on, your feelings, the interaction between the players. Actually know what you are doing, even if you don't really know what you're really doing. Audiences really resonate with somebody who can speak on quantum physics but absolutely knows nothing about it, and they want to see how well they can come up with material, and on top of that, how well they can sell it.
It's called gravity.
Always know what note you're going to play on the guitar. Always know what drum fill you're going to play. Always know what dialogue you're going to give your scene partner when you walk out on stage. Tip 6, it must always be night. Otherwise, they wouldn't need the lights. Play as if you're playing late at night for a crowd that comes out to watch or listen to you play late at night, right? You need to treat that 11 a.m. show like it's a 7:30 primetime Saturday night show. And so the amount of preparation that it may take for you to do an 11 a.m. show may be longer in order for you to get in the same mindset as the 7:30 set. So bring what you got to bring in order for you to play despite the hours. Tip number 7, don't play the piano part. I'm playing that. Don't listen to me. I'm supposed to be accompanying you. I love the idea of playing in an ensemble, right? You're playing music, you've got a piano, you've got a bass, you've got drums, you might have a trumpet player, a saxophone player. They're all playing individual parts that are suited for what it is that their instrument can do and showcase very well. If you've already got somebody playing something, maybe you bring in your flavor with what it is you want to add to it with your trumpet part or your saxophone part, right? So in improv, it's the same thing. If you see 3 people doing the same exact kind of comedy, or maybe the same exact kind of gestures or the same bits, maybe you come in with something different. They've already got that. They've got that on lockdown. Ask yourself, what can I do differently for this? What flavor can I bring to make my improv scene that much more interesting and bring some variety into the show? Tip number 8, don't play everything or every time. Let some things go by. Some music, just imagined. It's like when you're playing music and you're playing constantly, your audience can be fatigued by the number of notes and the number of voices and the number of instruments and the distortion. Your ear just turns off at that point. Your brain melts. It just no longer accepts the information that you're giving. If you're playing a million notes, what makes those individual notes any more unique than the other notes that were played? Silence is such a beautiful thing. If you add a lot of silence, when you make a statement with a certain note or a certain phrase, it means something because there was silence before. In improv, if you get up on stage and you're talking a mile a minute, what is going to make us want to listen to you some more just because you can speak very well? At the very top of your scene, do 10 seconds of silent object work just to build the tension, to build the honing in of your environment and your action, and then speak. Tip 9, stay in shape. Sometimes a musician waits for a gig, and when it comes, he's out of shape and can't make it. Those of you who are out there watching this and have not done any improv since quarantines have happened, you're missing out. You're not going to be in shape when theaters reopen and things reopen. You can do stuff with other people. You're not going to be in shape. And I think that's what's great about right now is that with all this online conferencing, I'm just going to call it all Zoom. With Zoom stuff, we can continue practicing our craft of improvisation. Yes, it is different. However, you're going to be in shape because you've been working with other people, maybe across the world. And those skills can translate from being online to being in the real world. So you're going to be in much better shape when everything opens up in 2021. You're going to be in a much better spot than someone who's just waited around because the aesthetic of the ideal version of improv hasn't been available to them. Tip number 10. What should we wear tonight? Sharp as possible. I love this note. When you are out on stage, doesn't matter if it's music or if it's improv, man, you need to dress as well as possible for that given gig. Meaning, you need to look better than your audience. You need to remind your audience that you're better than they are. That's right, I said it. You're better than they are. You're the reason they paid money, in theory, to come and see you. It's good for you to dress differently than your audience, and in fact, better than your audience, to remind them you're the hot stuff. And that's all I'm going to comment on this list of tips. Let me know what you think these tips mean and how you can apply them to improv. There are a few that I didn't even cover, so read through the list down below and pick one and go off on it in the comment section. I'm curious as to think if you agree with my interpretation and application of the given tip, or if you've got something that's completely novel. Put that down below. If you like this video, please like, share, subscribe, and rate the video. And that's all I've got. I've been your host, Nelson Velasquez, and thank you for watching. I love this note.